Heavy rains pounded the Austin, Texas area overnight and into the early morning hours, but they have abated and the sun has broken through just in time for qualifying for round 2 of the Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS season here at Circuit of the Americas. Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Marine. Amanda Busick will be patrolling the pit lane. It was great to have John Watson pinch hitting for us in Sonoma, but wonderful to have my colleague Calvin Fishback once again in the broadcast booth and cars. Calvin, already on track as we get ready for the first of 2 qualifying sessions, this one to set the grid for race number 1 of the weekend.
Great to be back, mate, and I think everyone's surprised by the sunshine that we're currently viewing out there in a relatively dry racetrack. We just had GT4 Sprint X qualifying on a drying line. You can see it there. I think everyone will be on slick Pirelli P0s, and the real key is the forecast looks good for the next 60 minutes or so. So it's going to be all about really getting that peak lap towards the end of this 15-minute qualifying session. Then we'll have a 5-minute break, and then driver 2 will do their qualifying chores here this morning.
So many wonderful storylines to talk about, and this certainly is one of them. We'll talk more about the addition of the McLaren 720S GT3 to the grid, but first, how about an update from Amanda Busick down in the pit lane?
Well, Ryan and Calvin, it is great to hear your voice, and I can assure you the conversation here is still the weather. I'm standing by with Colin Brown with DXDT Racing. According to the weather forecast now, it could hit right when you guys are in race. How do you feel the Mercedes will handle the rain?
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. You know, this car's proven to be fast in Europe in the wet. We haven't run it a ton here in the U.S. in the wet, but George and I did that Spa 24-hour race last year, which was totally wet pretty much the whole time. So we got some good experience from that. I like driving in the rain, and so does George. So I think you know, our CrowdStrike car should be fast. We were pretty good in the dry yesterday, and so we'll see.
With that being a potential, does that put extra pressure on qualifying here?
Yeah, I think in a way it does, in a way it doesn't. I mean, there's going to be so many unknowns. If it does rain, that's going to change our strategy and change, you know, the race start, the restarts, the yellows, all those things. So, you know, I think it's good for us. We got a great team. These guys have been working super hard, and you know, we're obviously you know, going to keep our heads down and see what happens. Only thing we can't do is control the weather, so we'll just adapt.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. Great to hear from Colin Brown, one of the many Texans in the field here this weekend. Just a 15-minute qualifying session here, Q1. Q2 will follow, so it is rapid paced here, Calvin, especially around a lengthy track like Circuit of the Americas, 20 corners, nearly 3.5 miles. And watching these cars go through, what do you make of their disposition? How much grip do you think is available to them here in the early running?
Well, it should start to come in. I mean, the real key is here, we're allowed tire warmers, the blankets, and the oven. So it's really about the teams really doing their data collection yesterday and identifying where they want that pressure to be when they bolt the tires on the car for this qualifying run. And talking to some of the teams, this racetrack doesn't generate, in the conditions we're seeing here this weekend, the typical numbers that you would have seen at Sonoma, for example, in rounds 1 and 2. So it's all about really matching that preset pressure and temperature in the tire oven when you throw it on the car, not exceeding where you want to be with the thresholds during this 15-minute session. But as you said, it's a very long lap, so you're only going to get 7 or 8 qualifying laps here. Not a lot of chance to make a change. We did clarify that with the rules this year, you could in fact do a tire change within this session and still keep your times to that point. I don't think with the shortness and the fact that the track's going to continue drying out, you just want to be out there, really work with the team in terms of getting a clear lap. Even though there's 3.5 miles, you know what races are like. They always seem to fumble over each other towards the end of the critical laps here in a qualifying session. So getting that correct and really dialing in, nailing the setup, nailing the pressures, and getting a clear lap at the end could be the key to pole.
Giovanni Venturini in the green Lamborghini out of K-Pax Racing. What a debut it was for K-Pax with this Lamborghini Aragon GT3 Evo back at Sonoma. A sweep of the weekend with the sister car, this car that Giovanni shares with Corey Lewis. Runners-up in both of the races, and my goodness, did they look stout making that transition from the Bentley of the last couple of seasons here to the Lamborghini.
Yeah, I mean, to some people it'd be a surprise, but when you know the history of that team and the caliber of the drivers that they've got lined up this year, probably not a surprise to some. So I think the real key is here coming this weekend. They didn't test here like a lot of the other teams. 3 of the 4 drivers. Corey Lewis is the only one of their 4-driver squad that has had laps here at COTA. But with simulation, they talked about Jordan Pepper in terms of how he prepares, who drives the sister car to the one that we've been looking at with Venturini. his third lap at Sonoma was within a second of his best all weekend long. So that's the talent of these guys and the simulation that they can go through and be prepared for a race weekend.
Really remarkable stuff. It also helped that that was the home track for the K-Pax racing team. As you said, a little less familiar here with Circuit of the Americas in this car without any testing, and the practice sessions have been in mixed conditions. It's really hard to know what you learned from a couple of practices yesterday, because this track, as we see it right now, there's little resemblance in terms of the grip level available to what we saw yesterday.
Yeah, it's ever evolving, but I think everyone's sort of like got a feel for the perfectly dry conditions, which we're going to get to probably by the end of this, at least the second qualifying segment here this morning. And then we're expecting rain this afternoon. There wasn't wet weather. Problem here for the 61 AF Corsa Ferrari. Sado had issues at Sonoma as well.
Yeah, that's Ziad Gondor behind the wheel. He did have an accident in one of the practice sessions at Sonoma that actually required them to get a new chassis. They repaired the damaged one on site at Sonoma and were able to get through the weekend, but that damage was significant, and a new chassis here for this weekend, and it looks like the rear wing dislodged. So unfortunately, when that happens in Q1, it's a bit of a double whammy, because unless they can get that fixed, then that's going to affect them, because Q2 comes up in just a matter of moments following the end of this session.
Yeah, so they've got 8 minutes on the board here left to try and work on the car, 5-minute break. So maybe it really depends on, it's all about the brackets. Just changing the rear wing element is not a big issue, but it's what it all bounces down to in the structure of the crash structure of the car at the rear end of that Ferrari. So that'll be the key.
Michael Dinan behind the wheel of the Turner Motorsport BMW M6 GT3. Just the second race weekend for young Michael Dinan in a GT3 car. He's paired with Robbie Foley. They finished third and fourth in a couple of races at Sonoma to get the season started. One of 4 cars in the pro category here. And quite frankly, they left Sonoma hopeful that they'd get to COTA and the track would suit the BMW a little bit more. Frankly, they did not feel like Sonoma was the best place for that M6, but there is a big learning curve when you talk about a driver as young as Michael Dinan is. A lot of experience and a lot of success in GT4 over the last couple of seasons, but he's still very new to professional motorsport.
Yeah, and I think coming off a year like he had last year, what did he have, 17 wins collectively between the Sprint Championship and the Sprint X with Robbie. I think they won 6 races together and 9 for... it's really about the mindset. This is a whole different level. And with the BMW, there you see the damage to the tail end of that race car. And as I said, it's all about where those brackets go down through the bodywork and bolt onto the rear end of that car. Probably be too tough to get that car fixed for the second segment here. But for Michael Dinan, it's really just adjusting his mental approach to it. You can't expect to come in and be running right at the front and beat the likes of the K-Pax squad with the talent that they have at the Lamborghini factory drivers. So this is where Robbie Foley needs to play his part. Excellent young driver, but more importantly, I think in these early season races, to really mentor Michael and kind of limit his expectations with this new category that he's entertaining this season.
A bit of a developing story, perhaps. Jordan Pepper has not been listed as completing a lap at speed. It says he's gone around twice, but lists him in the pits right now, and not quite sure what that would be all about. But that's one of the 2 K-Pax Racing Lamborghinis that we're talking about. They swept the opening weekend of the season. Jordan and his co-driver Andrea Caldarelli. At the moment, no representative time, 16th on the leaderboard, and hopefully we can get some information about what might be going on with that car. Meanwhile, another Lamborghini, and my goodness, are there a lot of them this year in GT World Challenge America. This one out of the Reardon Racing stable, Jeff Burton behind the wheel, and he's got a nice Sector 2 going as it stands relative to his personal best. Right now, Jeff Burton 5th in the overall standings, 3rd in the Pro-Am class, right behind Fred Hornad and ahead of David Askew.
Yeah, you talk about Lamborghini leading the numbers in terms of, we've got 8 manufacturers in this 16-car field, but Lamborghini have 5, so it's really the running of the bulls, and just a big switch. I mean, with K-Pax coming, obviously, with their 2-car entry, it's become quite the popular mark. I think it has a good sweet spot with the race car in terms of the 7 circuits that we'll get to this year, so it should be strong everywhere.
our graphics package this year, you can see those hash marks next to the driver names here in qualifying. Those represent the 3 sectors around the track. If you see a green hash mark, that means a driver's personal best sector has been set. A purple means the overall best sector time has been set. Yellow means no improvement. So what I'm looking at here, our current provisional pole man, Giovanni Venturini, personal best sector 1, now overall best sector 2. But how about the youngster Michael Dinan? He is on the charge.
Yeah, and I think that's a key factor. Looking at that BMW, it's a long wheelbase car. So when you look at sector 1, you know, it's got like up the hill, got good power up there, good braking performance, and then through the initial part of the S's is where sector 1 finishes. That's what we expected to see with that BMW. Where the BMW may struggle is through that 3rd sector. When we get to turn 12 and it really starts to tighten up, Ryan, that's where I think the Lamborghini should have a bit of an edge.
This is Rodrigo Salas behind the wheel of the Compass Racing Acura NSX GT3, fresh off a weekend racing a Ferrari in the European Le Mans Series just last weekend. He's got a huge schedule this year. Back to Jeff Burton, who continues to show well. Dropped down to 6th just a moment ago. Looks like Zion Gondor got back out because he's now set the 4th fastest time, if that's correct on timing and scoring. So a lot of credit to AF Corsa if they were able to get that resolved.
Absolutely. And looking at the lap times, 2:10 is current fast time. They were running in the 5s yesterday, so about 5-6 seconds off. So this to me is an indicator that in this session, with only 3 minutes left on the board, the track is going to get really to those perfect dry conditions. But by the end of that 2nd segment, when driver 2 will attack this racetrack, we could get down to some of those representative dry times we saw here yesterday. The real key with these painted curbs, not so much at apex, but when you're coming off the corner, you've got to be really careful, Ryan, because there's not going to be the grip when the car is fully loaded on those outside tires. So again, with the doubleheader weekend, you can't afford to risk too much. We're not that far away from race time here today, so you got to really factor that one in the big picture. Yes, you want to be fastest, you want to be right at the sharp end of the grid, but don't throw it all away and potentially ruin the whole weekend for one lap.
So with 2.5 minutes remaining, it is Venturini on provisional pole by 0.8 of a second over Dinan. And then this car, Brendan Iribe, making his debut in SRO America competition. A lot of experience racing primarily in Europe and Asian championships. And we'll have a lot to say about that over the course of the weekend. But this Inception Racing by Optimum team, he's been running with them in a bunch of different championships as of late. Made the decision to come here and represent the McLaren brand in the Pro-Am category in GT World Challenge America. They missed the opener at Sonoma, but they intend to be at every race the rest of the way. And fascinating, it's a European crew. They're GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup crew. They also use them for GT Open competition. They're flying them over here to the States, except for, I think, their truck driver and 1 crew member.
Wow.
Based out of a local shop here in nearby Buda, Texas. And they've got big-time aspirations. It's great. He's an American based in L.A., but hasn't done much racing in the States until now.
Yeah, and I think this is probably another opportunity to really showcase that Pro-Am combination with Ollie MILLROY. He's got a lot more experience, and I think he'll really teach his teammate the ropes here. And it's great that they're really committed to the rest of the championship, and great to see another brand represented on the grid as well. Which brings it up to 8 for the season.
Really exciting news there, and McLaren also in the news since the Sonoma round, joining the Global GT World Challenge Championship for manufacturers that factors in points in all 4 of the SRO GT World Challenge Series here in North America, in Europe, in Australia, the new championship for this year. And although it's been delayed, once the GT World Challenge Asia Series gets underway, points can be accumulated there. It's a bit of a convoluted point scoring structure depending on the number of cars in the class and things of that nature, but great to see more manufacturer involvement as that continues to grow. And Brendan Iribe, personal best there in Sector 2, currently 3rd on the leaderboard, still chasing Michael Dinan for the class pole and Giovanni Venturini overall.
So this is a really impressive run from him. I was going to ask you about that point structure, how it all works, Ryan.
I don't have enough time to go through the permutations, and quite frankly, I also lack the expertise. But it is a really great idea that the SRO has put in, because it gets buy-in from the manufacturers to be involved in the various championships. You see the crossover teams running in multiple championships. It's really, really cool, and great to see that the OEMs are seeing the value in it. As David asked you, takes the checkered flag there. He is down in 8th as it stands from DXDT Racing. It is important to note, by the way, that Jordan Pepper has made it out on track at the last moment and has set a time already up to 5th overall, 4th in class, and I think still has one more chance to try and improve. So credit to the K-Pax team. Whatever the issue was, they were able to get it resolved.
Yeah, and looking at the first sector, he's within 6,000ths of his teammate. So as he starts to wind up here, and Venturini just went purple, meaning fastest for the session in Sector 2. Sector 2 completes just as you get to the brake zone for turn 12 down at the end of the long back stretch, and then Sector 3 is the really tight, twisty stuff.
This is the series debut for this car that helps to bump our grid from 14 at Sonoma to 16 here in Circuit of the Americas. That is Harward behind the wheel of the Zalus Motorsports car. They'll be sharing that with Madison Snow, a couple of Utah natives. 8th in class, 12th overall. Here we go. This is the car we've been waiting to see all session long. The points leaders, Caldarelli and Pepper, with their first bit of misfortune, quite frankly, that they faced all season long. It was a perfect weekend, fastest in every session at Sonoma, as far as I can recall at least. Certainly all the ones that counted. Poles, fastest laps in the race, wins in both of the races. But right now, 5th as it stands on the leaderboard here, but coming around to complete one last flying lap.
Yeah, and that second sector, even though he went personal best, he's about 4/10 off his teammate, so I don't think he's going to have enough in the hand here to really sneak the pole unless he puts a tremendous third sector together.
But right now, he's also last out of all of the pro class runners, so he can jump some, and look at that lap from Jordan Pepper.
What a third sector, amazing. He lost 4/10 in that middle sector of his teammate and made it all back up plus some in the final sector. And this is why K-Pax is so impressed with this young South African. What a day. What a performance, coming out late, getting the tires up to temp, and having the confidence in these conditions to really wring the car's neck a little bit. Look really twitchy there through 16, 17, and 18, but he makes it stick.
3 flying laps. That's all Jordan Pepper had, and he stuck it on pole by nearly half a second over a Lamborghini factory driver, Giovanni Venturini. 4/10 of a second, the final margin there. Absolutely amazing. And it brings to mind his performance at the Indianapolis 8-hour last year, Calvin, where they were an early out due to some contact, but his opening stint was incredible. Mixed conditions on slick tires, and kind of similar to what we're seeing here. While you take a look at the results on the screen, let's get down to Amanda Busick in the pit lane.
Well, Andrea had to run off. He's getting ready to jump into this car, but I can tell you his eyes were glued onto those monitors with a sigh of relief seeing Jordan Pepper go to the #1 pole. But what happened with that Lamborghini, there was a tire puncture in the right rear wheel, guys.
That does explain why he had turned some laps, but not with a lap time, just right out and back into the pits. So thank you for that update, Amanda. That does help to give us some idea. There we look at the results. What stands out to you from Q1 of the weekend here at COTA?
Well, I think I'm very impressed with Michael Dinan's qualifying performance there, and I think it really showcases that BMW is going to be a lot stronger here. They've also done some testing. Turner Motorsports run this platform in a different championship on different tires, and I think they really had to go in a different direction to get this car working on the Pirelli P0s. And I think that homework is paying dividends right now.
Certainly looks that way. What a debut as well. Pro-Am class pole for the Inception Racing team. Brendan Reeve in his series debut will lead the Pro-Am class. 4th overall, slots in ahead of one of the pro entries out of Windward Racing. So impressive stuff there for the McLaren team. I think looking a little bit further down, maybe DXDT Racing comes away from this scratching their heads a bit. They had good pace at Sonoma, but their best qualifier was looks like George Kurtz there in the 7th spot. I suspect that's not quite what they were hoping for.
No, but again, I think you have to look at the big picture of this whole weekend. You know what I mean? It's probably going to be wet this afternoon, and yeah, you'd love to be at the sharp end and have better visibility if there's deep water out there potentially. But don't throw it all away. And when you've got a racetrack that's evolving like it was, and if you step out of line or get on one of those wet curbs, so easy to damage the race car and then really create a headache for yourself for the rest of the week.
And I had to correct myself. I had a misidentification there. I thought that Gondor was in that AF Corsa car, but in fact it was the TR3 car. So we did see the AF Corsa car with JC Sada driving that had the issue with the rear wing. They did not make it back in, so apologies there for that confusion. Now we see the teams getting the second driver ready to go and a second set of tires as well. What can you learn from Q1, and then what can you do to the cars to help your driver for Q2?
You can learn a lot, but there's not a lot of time to play with. So it'll really be about the engineers and specifically the tires. You know, what was the preset in terms of coming out the ovens on that first run? What sort of tire temperatures did those tires that now came off reach? What sort of pressures did they have? And maybe make a slight adjustment there. It's tough to really cool the tires down if they're already in the oven being preheated, but you know, maybe that will just give some information to the driver. Listen, we're probably a little bit over temp right now, we're over pressured, so don't go out there and push too hard, let them settle down a little bit and then start to really roll. But I think for this session, just like the last one, we saw Jordan Pepper lay down that flyer at the end, and that was all in sector 3, so you imagine if he had another run and he got those big chunks on one more lap, I think we're going to see some times here probably 2 seconds quicker than we saw in that first segment.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind too is with the Pro-Am lineups, that was the lower graded driver that was out for Q1. Now we have the pros in those lineups, and as we saw at Sonoma, these pros in the Pro-Am lineups are extremely fast, they're extremely accomplished, and I suspect we're going to have a more mixed up grid as a consequence of pros going head-to-head with the pro class cars.
Yeah, and I think what it gives is great opportunity, for example, with ALTOE, for example, with the TR3 Lamborghini. He would love to put one over the pro cars with the K-Pax squad, you know, even though he knows with his teammate in terms of getting an overall result, it may be tough unless circumstances with a yellow or something, getting a reset in the races for him to win overall, but he would love to qualify these K-Pax cars. He was quick here yesterday in the final practice session with the fastest time. So they're the type of opportunities that a young man and a young driver, even though he's Lamborghini factory, he still wants to make a statement.
Yeah, Giacomo ALTOE did not have a great opening weekend. The TR3 racing team at Sonoma had some issues there, did not complete race number 1. They had to start at the back and actually recovered for a decent finish, coming home 6th in race number 2, but although he's only done one previous race weekend in the States prior to that Sonoma race weekend, he might not be a household name here. He's extremely accomplished in Europe, came through the Lamborghini Super Trofeo program, earned young driver status based on winning championships in that single make series, represented Lamborghini in championships like International GT Open, where he won the championship in 19. Last year did a lot of his racing in GT World Challenge Europe sprint and endurance competition, a couple of other races here and there, but has been fully embraced starting last year as a full-on Lamborghini factory driver, extremely fast. We'll have to keep an eye on him here in this qualifying session. Amanda's got more information for us, though, right now in the pits.
Well, guys, he came out to a round of applause from his team. Jordan Pepper put the number 3 on the pole. You were still a little bit off in the second sector off pace. What did you find in that third final push to put your team on top?
Yeah, well, it's not an easy qualifying for me, actually. We waited for the track to dry out a bit, so we went out with 5 minutes later than everyone. On my first push lap, I had a puncture, so I had to box, put another tire on, go out, and then on my push lap, I actually had to pass the Aston Martin in the middle sector, so I think I lost like 1 second there. And then the last sector, they told me what I had to do, and I put it like everything into it. And yeah, credits to the boys, they reacted really quickly to the puncture, and then we just managed to get that last lap in, which was so crucial.
When you're in that moment, how do you handle your composure?
You know, if you stress, you're just going to make matters worse. So I knew I had 1 lap, and we were like, okay, find the track position, but you know, it's tricky conditions out there, so it's hard to judge the Aston. I think he was struggling a lot, and I just said, you know what, I got to do the lap, and let's see. I made quite a bold move on him, but yeah, I had to do it.
Nice job.
Thank you.
He's a cool customer, isn't he? Jordan Pepper, so impressive.
He is, and this is why the K-Pax squad elected. I mean, they've had some of the best guys like Alvaro Perrin, but when it was in terms of who they wanted to select, there's Lamborghini factory pilots obviously within. They got a Lamborghini junior driver with Corey Lewis, but Jordan Pepper is not a Lamborghini factory driver. He's all K-Pax, and for them to make that choice, they really saw a lot from him last year. Performances like you talked about at Indy really make a statement. They just said he is one of the best passers that we've ever seen in terms of passing race cars in traffic, and this morning is just really what he's all about. Under pressure, maintaining his composure, as Amanda asked him, how do you do that? And it's like, well, when you stress out, you're going to make a mistake, and he didn't make a mistake and threw down a lap.
He was excellent as well in Bentley's win at the Bathurst 12 hour, which I think got a lot of people's attention too. Needing no introduction is this man, Andrea Caldarelli, as fast as they come behind the wheel of a Lamborghini, and he was picture perfect at Sonoma. You never would have known. He had never raced there before, because I think he had fastest lap in both races, had pole for his race. They swept the weekend, as mentioned. Extremely accomplished driver, and I think he's loving his racing here in the States.
Yeah, and you can see him there twitching a little bit down at the brake zone for turn 11. Probably got into the ABS a little bit, so lost the front end momentarily, as it kind of takes away some of the braking and the turning into the corner. But yeah, hasn't done a ton on US soil. First time here at COTA, has run the Rolex 24 5 times, won it last year. So, you know, Lamborghini believes in this man, and I think really a testimony to how important this championship is. There's now a clash between the Nürburgring 24-hour race and our next round of Virginia, and Lamborghini has said, no, Andrea, we want you to be here and maintain that championship position you currently have with the K-Pax squad.
That's right, so he stood down from a role with a team that he manages, the Orange One FFF racing team that is so active in European racing. He's kind of in charge of a lot of their day-to-day operations and prioritize this program, which is great to see. Definitely one of the stars of global GT racing, and a big bonus to this series to have him in the paddock. P1, as it stands, going about halfway through this session, is that Inception Racing McLaren. What a debut. Ollie MILLROY, who is awfully fast behind the wheel of a McLaren, currently with the quickest time by 1.2 seconds over Robbie Foley in the Turner BMW, but still very early. Several cars have not even made it out to complete a full flying lap.
Yeah, and Halen just pips him that top time with purple sectors in sector 2 and 3. But yeah, that McLaren, they run British GT competition, so this is a typical summer day over in the UK. A little bit of sunshine, probably poured down rain for a couple of hours in the morning, and just get on with it. So this is going to be a fascinating session as Robbie Foley now starts to get up to speed. Personal best in sector 1 and 2, as you can see with the green indicator on your screen right now.
He's got Matt McMurray right behind him. That's the Compass Racing Acura NSX GT3 Evo. Showed good pace at Sonoma, but didn't necessarily have the results they were hoping for. It's kind of a flip to the Turner car. They did not leave Sonoma all that encouraged.
Ooh,
big,
huge
wild
moment there.
And right in front of MILLROY as well. That's a heart in your throat moment.
Is that Kozarov?
Must be. That is the Reardon Racing Lamborghini.
And that's what I talked about, loading the tire. If you get out on those painted curves, not so much at apex where you're on the unloaded part of the car as you're turning through an apex of a corner, like for example right here. But when you're coming off the corner, when the car is loaded, you're under hard acceleration, and they've got a TC control. It's typically 10 to 12 different settings that they can adjust with. But right there, you can see the spray as well. The water sits on that painted surface. It doesn't just, you know, absorb into the track surface. So as the racetrack dries and you suddenly get out there, really treacherous.
This is the aforementioned Giacomo ALTOE. We talked about it, this TR3 racing team. They've been active in this series for a long time, but it's always been with Ferraris. It's a big switch for that operation in the offseason. They're very involved now in single-make Lamborghini racing, too. But this is the pinnacle of their program, and ALTOE, with that wild slide, maybe not, well, even still, even with that wild slide, he goes P1. Wow.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be a great little battle here to see if he can put it over the two K-Pax cars in this. Oh, big slide there on Colin Brown. Second fastest in practice yesterday. Had a solid run at Sonoma. Podium run, won the podium overall, and a win in Pro-Am.
But Jan Halen just laid down the gauntlet. He's on provisional pole by half a second.
Look at those times.
Yeah.
Michael Cooper, that's a great run for him. One of the DXDT Mercedes AMG machines that he's sharing with Aaron Vogel.
This is a sister car, Colin Brown driving, sharing with George Kurtz.
The same thing for Michael Cooper. Yes, I mean, he's won at this level. He's got 4 championships behind him in SRO competition, but you know that he would love to beat his probably more established teammates in terms of Colin Brown and Ryan Dial.
No question about that. Extremely accomplished driver in this paddock, winning championships at the touring car, GT4 and GT3 level over the course of what is a relatively young career, to be quite honest. Look at that, Jan Halen, purple sector 1 again.
Yeah, Philip Ellis went purple third sector, moved up to second. And we believe we have clarification on his nationality, even though there's the GB flag up there. We believe he's Swiss, right?
That's what the team tells us.
Yep.
That's what they've got on the race car. But it is a bit complicated. I think his parents are split British and German nationals, and he lives in Switzerland. So you do the math. What is he? We're told Swiss is the answer.
I had Belgium written down, so I don't know where that came from. Some misinformation somewhere in the paddock over the last couple of seasons. But nonetheless, coming off a massive win, he and the whole team got a great run at the Rolex 24 this year.
Yes.
And that car has been put into kind of a mothballs, according to the team, in terms of we're going to save that one and done. It was a brand new car that ran at the Rolex 24, and they intend to just keep it that way.
Speaking of the Windward Racing car this weekend, you'll remember at Sonoma they were running the previous generation Mercedes-AMG GT3 pre-Evo. And what I've been told from a Mercedes representative is that the car this weekend is upgraded to the Evo package. We had initially thought it was a brand new car, straight up an Evo car, but that's not the case. It was upgraded. But it is new to them and has been fully rebuilt, so they're really encouraged about that car, and you can see it in the pace so far from Philip Ellis. Just over 3 minutes left in this session. Third quick at the moment, trailing Giacomo ALTOE, who we were singing his praises just a little while ago. Jan Halen second. Andrea Caldarelli, keep an eye on that car, down in fourth. It swept every pole position thus far in the season. There goes Ellis back to P1 with personal and actually overall best second and third sector times.
This is great. I mean, I love a drawing racetrack. It'll be all about the timing. Who gets that last flying lap, nails it, puts it together, all three sectors, and doesn't come across any traffic as well. And the racetrack's pretty much looking at perfectly dry times right now. So I expect to see someone dip into the fives. How deep into the fives will they go?
Ollie Milroy, British driver, done a lot of racing in Asia over the course of his career, but got hooked up with Brendan Reed a few years back, and they have a huge schedule this year, including the 24 Hours of Le Mans, but also GT World Challenge Europe. They're running International GT Open, and the rest of this season, too. As talked about, it is a busy time for that European-based crew that's flying all over the world, even in these difficult times. Here's ALTOE across the line.
Not a great third sector.
No.
He seems to be being pretty conservative on the exit at turn 19. A couple of times we've seen him come through there, Ryan. Looks like he's just trying to make sure that he secures the lap. Had a personal best first sector, I believe, and yes, and best overall second, and then didn't even match his personal best for that third sector, and that cost him a tenth or two. It means he doesn't move to the pole, but is on the front row right now.
And Ellis had a overall best first sector, but then lost some time in sector 2. He's on provisional pole, but only by 0.17 seconds, so 1700ths of a second over ALTOE. Then it's Jan Halen, about 0.6 of a second back in third. You got to go quite a ways back to get to David. Well, that would be Ryan Dial, actually, in the DXDT car that's currently fourth on the leaderboard.
See, through 19, Ellis to me seems more committed than ALTOE is through there, so I think that's where he's gaining some time. He may have got traffic on that second sector, but as you can see, enough time on the board for one more last lap flyer. And he's got a little bit of traffic up ahead. That will be the key, whether he can clear that or not, run up on it before the end of this lap.
Still nearly improved.
He did improve at 205.9.
Yeah, you're right.
So he's the first to dip into the fives.
There's Milroy.
Yeah, I think Ellis has got more time in hand here if he can put it together.
Milroy jumps his spot past Foley and gets up to 9th.
Caldarelli is not on a good lap here, so he could be, for him, mired deep in the pack here.
And right now, 6th on the leaderboard. Just got bumped down by a nice lap out of Madison Snow in his debut with the Zalus team. This team was supposed to run at Sonoma, but for various reasons elected to focus their efforts on their GT America program. Jason Harward, Madison Snow stepping in and looking very strong, 4th right now.
Caldarelli's in trouble here. I don't think this is going to be a good lap. Checkered flags out, so this is going to be his final run. Can he move up the grid some? But he's not going to threaten the pole.
Well, let's find out. Yes, he does improve, but up to 4th and
a
immediately
second
dropped
off.
to 5th.
Yeah.
Right.
Over a second off the pole. And almost he's in fact a second off ALTOE with the TR3 Lamborghini as well. So I wonder with the setups for the K-Pax team, whether it's more suited to those slightly damp conditions, maybe guesstimating the track wouldn't get to this condition where you're pretty much in ideal conditions. And if they compromise the setup, maybe went a little bit softer to make it more compliant in the damp settings, that really hurt their ability to run a fast lap here. Look at Madison Snow, they're twitching there through that triple apex right-hander.
Purple sector 1, green sector 2, so he's definitely trending in a way to improve, but how much? Just a couple corners, one corner to go.
He is pushed a little bit around the stairs. He tried to get it turned in, keeps it together. Oh no, lost a lot there. So that second and third sector, not as quick as ELLIS or ALTOE.
Still 6th on debut for a very young team. Not bad at all. There is ALTOE in that TR3 Racing Lamborghini. Had a good first sector, not so much in the second.
So it's ALTOE, he's Canadian.
Sure.
Yeah. Got it.
I gotcha.
I'll get with the program. Yes.
Now, I've been wrong before, so I'm willing to be corrected on that, but I believe that is correct. Let's see if he can go. I think this is the last car that has a chance to threaten. Right behind is Drew Stavely in the Ian Lacey Racing Aston. It says Frank Gannett, but Frank was out in session 1. So a little something goofy with timing and scoring. ALTOE cannot steal the pole away. Gets to within 0.144 seconds of the pole time from ELLIS. Haywood will be 3rd, Colin Brown in 4th, David Askew 5th, Madison Snow 6th. Well, finally, somebody breaks K-Pax Racing stranglehold on pole positions in this series. It took 4 rounds of qualifying to do it, and it goes to the Windward Racing team. Very impressive out of Philip Ellis in the new Evo Spec Mercedes.
Well, that's an awesome run for him. Obviously, very talented driver, going to be running in the DTM championship this year with the Windward Racing team in Lucas Hour. So big season ahead for Philip, and he's deserving these opportunities based on performances like this morning.
And they were racing in GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup competition just a couple of weeks back at Monza in mixed conditions there. What a crazy race that was, and maybe that helped give them a bit of a preview for what to expect here at Circuit of the Americas. Look at that sunny sky, Calvin. That is not what we expected to wake up to today, but we'll take it if it holds. We could have a really fun day of racing. A whole lot of action coming your way, including the first race, round 2, third race of the season for Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, but also GT America, Pirelli GT4 America, and TC America, all still to come today from COTA.
That was a fun one. I mean, lots of surprises, mixed up grid in terms of where you think the hierarchy is within this class right now. But, you know, we expect this afternoon to have some wet weather, so that'll throw everyone a new curveball. And then it's really about using the data that was put together yesterday in the damp and wet sessions and seeing who comes out on top this afternoon. But watching the K-Pax cars come from 8th and 9th on the grid, that'll be a fun one. And again, you got these pro-am combinations that will be the pros will be getting in. This is qualifying for tomorrow, so this should be the dry setup. So it's going to make it even tougher for Caldarelli and Lewis to make up ground in perfectly dry conditions that we anticipate for this race tomorrow.
Let's get down and hear from our pole team with Amanda Busick down in the pit lane.
Well, guys, you just missed the cheers and the slaps on the back to Russell Ward. And when you watch Philip Ellis take the Windward Racing to the #1 spot, what was that like for you to see?
Yeah, look, it feels good. I think it's always been in there, and so, you know, it's just a matter of getting it out. You know, I think this this racetrack suits the Mercedes quite well. A lot of fast speed stuff, so you know, it's good to, you know, get one up on K-Pax.
Congratulations.
That's a happy guy as well. He should. Russell Ward really improving in recent years. Here, let's take a look at some of the highlights from qualifying. K-Pax Racing ruled the roost once again in Q1. This was the sister car, Giovanni Venturini. Behind the wheel, shares that car with Corey Lewis. Andrea Caldarelli here behind the wheel.
Yeah, this is his teammate, I think, Jordan Pepper, late in the session putting that run together.
Impressive stuff from Jordan for sure after a tire puncture that delayed their running, but it sets the field for our race later on this afternoon.